All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I appreciate everyone coming out tonight. I thank you for joining us. We're going to have Kristen White with us tonight. She is known as the Chicken Librarian, and she's going to teach us how to make handmade pies. I'm sure it'll be a very fun evening. We have muted everyone when they come in. If you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat. You know, I'll see them, and Kristen will also check as well. And then I'm sure at the end, we'll have time for questions also. And with that, I appreciate everyone for coming out. Thank you. And we'll go ahead and get started. Kristen. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so like Jonathan said, I am Kristen White, and my business is Chicken Librarian, and I travel around teaching people how to do stuff, make stuff, and homesteading stuff. Tonight we're making hand pies, which is a really just kind of like a pie that you can take in your hand and travel around with you. I do check the chat, so if you have any questions, want me to slow down, repeat something, whatever, throw it in there, and I will try to get to it as soon as I can. I don't mind being interrupted. This is one of my absolute most favorite things to teach. I find people love pie, and these are really easy to make. So we're going to start with dough, then we're going to do our filling, then we're going to put everything together. And I'm going to teach you how to make a dough, which is just a kind of a quick tutorial on making dough. You can also buy your own dough, and you can also use your own favorite recipe. My recipe is the one that I use for all my pies, okay? So to get started, let's do our pie crust. We're gonna need flour, butter, salt, water, all right? So we're gonna do 2 cups of flour into our bowl. I always like to start with a bowl, and then we'll turn it out onto the board. All right, so let's do 2 cups. And you measure however you want, like, you know, you take a little off the top, 1, 2, and then we're gonna add a teaspoon of salt in there. And I'm doing blueberry hand pies tonight, but this recipe really is for any kind of berry. That you could even do this with apples and, you know, pears or whatever, the bigger fruit. And if you do that, the only thing I would suggest is that maybe you chunk the apples a little smaller or make it more like an apple sauce type thing. But with the berries, you're gonna see, because I have some finished, you're gonna see how quickly these berries cook down. Okay, so we're gonna do a teaspoon of salt. And at the end, if you'd like, I do have this recipe on my website, and you can get the recipe there. So if you don't wanna take notes or make along with me or whatever, you don't have to tonight. Okay, I'm just gonna give that a little stir to mix in that salt a little bit. Okay, the next thing you're gonna do is you want 2 sticks of really cold butter. And then you're just gonna cut them up and you're gonna throw them into your flour salt mixture, all right? And like I said, this is just kind of a down and dirty pie crust tutorial. We're not getting into technicalities so much tonight, you know, on why we do what we do. But you just want really cold butter, and you're gonna want ice water at the after this stage too. But we're gonna cut our butter up and we're gonna put it into our flour mixture, and then we're gonna get our hands dirty. This is the fun part, getting your hands dirty. This is one of the things I love about pie, is that I feel like it's made with a lot of love, because you're using your hands. You get in there, you're getting it mixed up with all that love coming out into that pie crust. All right, so we're gonna do the second stick of butter the same way. I like to, in case you can't see me, sorry, I didn't realize, I cut my butter, this is just how I do it. There's no right or wrong way. I cut it lengthwise, and then I roll it, and I cut it lengthwise again. Oh, I try not to cut myself. I am pretty accident prone. All right, and then I just start chopping into little chunks here. I'll try to stay at the back of my board here so you guys can see me. All right, and again, we're going to be breaking this butter down, so you don't have to get it. You want it to be, you want the fat in it to, it'll break down better whenever it's cold. All right, so now all I'm doing is I'm getting in here and I'm just smushing this in between. I know, like, whenever you bake, you want room temperature usually because you're mixing it with, you're beating it together with the sugar and stuff. But with this, you want it cold because we're going to get in there with our hands and we're going to break down that fat. You're going to see whenever I show you the final product, and you'll see whenever I roll this out how much butter chunks are left in there, and that's so good for pie crust. Okay, so I'm just smushing this in between my hands. You're welcome. Hopefully I answered your question. So I'm kind of rolling this in my hands, and you want it to be like a pea-sized crumble, except for I don't mind having bigger chunks of butter. And I'm going to show you this whenever I get done with this. You're going to see my chunks of butter that I leave in here. It just makes such a good pie crust. And you'll see at the end, I have examples to show you of how yummy this is going to be. But now let's talk about pie crust for just a second. If you want to use lard, you can do that. It's 1-for-1 exchange, right? 2 sticks of butter, which is what, is that half a cup of butter? You would just use half a cup of your lard, your Crisco, your vegetable short, whatever it is that you want to use. You can also make this vegan and use coconut oil, all right? And you can also use gluten-free flour. I'm using just an all-purpose, whatever your favorite flour is, just make it all-purpose. And you can also, like I said, you can buy a gluten-free flour and exchange it 1-for-1. Okay, so this butter was actually came up to room temperature a little quickly. So let me just focus here for a second. Okay, now. So what'll happen is you'll look down and your flour starts out white, and you're going to look down and you're going to start to see it turn yellow from that butter. And that's whenever you know you've hit the right spot. Okay, now I'm going to show you what mine looks like. Hopefully you can see this. I know my lighting in here isn't the best, but I have all kinds of chunks in here of butter, and that's okay. A lot of it has turned kind of sandy, and a lot of it's pea size, but a lot of it's bigger chunks, and that's okay because it's going to roll out and it's going to bake up beautifully. Okay, so now we've done that. I'm going to break down a couple more of these just really kind of tight. You want to make sure that they're kind of smushed out and not so much chunks. Like I just had a couple of chunks of butter, like how I'd cut it, just make sure it's kind of evened out a little bit. Okay, now we're going to put in some cold water, ice water. Everything about pie crust is about being cold. It's all about that fat, getting that fat to break down to make us a nice crispy pie crust. All right, so we want 1 cup of ice cold water. Now this is going to also depend on the humidity. It's a little warmer out today, so I might take a little bit more water. All right, and it doesn't matter if you get your ice down in your pie crust or not, into your flour. It's all going to melt. You don't want to knead your pie crust though. That makes it hard. That breaks down the gluten. We don't want to break down gluten. Okay, so all I do is I go through and I just pour in a circle, and make sure you can see this, and I just start, you just kind of fold it. You're just folding that flour and that water together. Your hands are going to get dirty. This is where a lot of love comes in. All right. And you want it to start to stick together. And if it gets to be too wet, that's okay because we'll add more flour in. It's okay. And this is a double crust recipe. All right. I did not, your hand pie, your filling recipe will not fill a double crust, but it's easy enough to break down into a single crust. I always make a double crust. You can always put it in the freezer. And we'll talk about that in a minute because I'm going to talk to you about how you put these together, and maybe if you don't have time to do everything at once, how you can put stuff in the refrigerator, you can freeze stuff, and you can come back to it later. That's the beauty in all of this. Okay, so it's starting to come together, but I still have some dry on the bottom. I'm going to add a little bit more water, and I'm just folding it around. And I'm mushing it a little bit. I'm not kneading it. I'm just kind of making it stick together, all right? Now, you don't want it to be too wet. You don't want it to be too dry. How do you know? Well, we're going to figure that out here in just a second. I tend to make mine a little too wet. The one I made earlier today is very wet. And you'll know whenever you start to roll it out. And you'll see with this one that I made earlier that I'm going to roll out, you're going to see how wet it is and how much flour I actually have to add to it. Okay, so this is really wet, so I should put the lid back on the flour. That is a rookie mistake. I'm going to add just a little bit more flour in there. I'm just going to turn it around a little bit, and then I'm going to turn it out onto my cutting board, flour it really nicely. I'm going to cut it in half, and we're going to let it rest. And I'm going to wash my hands. So let's do that. And you know, they say never to eat the raw flour, but I can't help it. I always have to taste my dough. I don't recommend you do that though. They say not to because of the flour. Okay, raw flour is not good for you. All right, I'm going to set this bowl to the side. All right, can you see this? Let me push you back a little bit here so you can see me. All right, so what I like to do is it's very wet. I can tell because it's very sticky. All right, so I just like to flour it a couple of times, roll it over. So everything, see how dry? I don't know if you can see this. Let me see if I can show you this. This is very wet here. You can see a lot of butter. And then here where that flour is, this looks perfect. It's nice. It's not sticky. It's not dry. It's not crumbling whenever I touch it. Okay. So now I'm going to do, and I'm going to come back to this because we're going to add flour to it later whenever we roll it out anyway. All right. If it's too dry, it will actually crumble and crack whenever you are rolling it out. If it's too wet, it'll actually get really sticky. And like I said, you're going to see that later. Okay, so what I like to do now is I would wrap this in plastic wrap, and you really kind of want to refrigerate it for at least half an hour if you can. Sometimes you can't, and that's okay, because the ones I made today, I made my dough, I made my filling, I went back, I rolled out, and then I filled them and I put them in the oven, and they turned out fine. So, but if you can, and you're planning ahead, and you know, you're not doing this at the last minute like I tend to do, refrigerate this for half an hour. So we're going to put this to the side. We're done with that. I'm going to step right over here to the sink, and I'm just going to get this dough off of my hands, and we're going to come back to the filling. Okay? Give me just 1 second. You know it's bad to step off camera. Oh, there we go. All right, there we go. All right, so now that's your pie crust. You've made a pie crust. You're done. And now we're going to make our filling. We're going to do blueberries. So what do we need? We need 1 pint of blueberries. We need a 1/4 cup of sugar. You can use whatever kind of sugar you want. You can use white sugar, which I'm using tonight, but you can also exchange pretty much 1 for 1, maple syrup, molasses, honey, any kind of sugar that you want. It's pretty much a 1-to-1 exchange, except for whenever you're using a liquid, the maple syrup, you might want to bump your flour up. The maple syrup, the honey, the molasses, you might want to bump your flour up by about 1 teaspoon. So we're going to use a 1/4 cup of sugar, 4 tablespoons, which is a 1/4 cup of flour, and we're going to use the zest and juice of 1 lemon, and then you can use different spices, cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger. You can use, I don't know if you guys make lilac syrup, you can put some of that in there, you can put lavender in there, you can do whatever you want to, okay? But the basic recipe is 1 pint of berry, 1/4 cup of sugar, 4 tablespoons of flour, the zest and juice of 1 lemon. Okay, I'm going to grab a bowl. I'm going to put this to the side. I'm going to grab my berries. Did you guys pick any blueberries yet? I know season's pretty much over for us here, but I just picked a ton of blueberries. And we're going to be using, not the ones I picked. I turned that into some other stuff. Okay, some sugar. Got distracted talking about picking blueberries. Yes, thank you. That's a great question. Yes, you can use fresh or frozen, and you don't have to thaw them. If you're using frozen, just throw them right in. No big deal, because you're going to be baking these. Your bake time might be slightly longer, but yeah, totally. You can use whatever you want. Okay, what am I doing? So we got to do the math because I have just a thing of berries, right? So if I've done my math right, we know that ounces is 1 cup. 16 ounces is 2 cups. So I need 2 cups of berries. I'm just going to pick out some of the yucky ones. They've been sitting in the refrigerator for a couple of days. And I washed them and picked them out, but that doesn't mean that they didn't get a little yucky while they're in there. Or I missed some stems. And honestly, I don't really destem my blueberries because you're gonna bake them, so they're gonna kind of like become mush anyway. So I don't always destem, and I don't really notice any difference. Okay, that was 2 cups, roughly 2 cups of berries. Let me move back here so you can see that. We're going to do a 1/4 cup of sugar. Like I said, you can use whatever kind of sugar you want. And you don't have to use a 1/4 cup. If you want to go a little less sugar, that's fine. All you're really doing is you're just trying to make that a little sweet, and the sugar is going to break those berries down. That's what we're aiming for, is to break the berries down. Okay? Get rid of that guy. Set the lid back on my sugar. And then 4 tablespoons of flour. And the flour is just to help absorb some of the liquid that's created from this. Otherwise, you just have a big runny mess. And we don't want a big runny mess whenever we're doing hand pies. And this is basically the same for whenever you're doing a pie too. You actually add flour to help thicken it up. Okay, we're going to do a lemon, zest. Use whichever side you want. Normally I use the big side, but I think it's kind of dull, so I'm using this kind of in between side. And we're going to zest that right in there. And if you want like a blueberry lemon, because you're not going to get a ton of lemon flavor from this, but if you want like more lemon, add more lemon to it, right? Add more zest, add more juice to it. Because blueberry lemon is really good. If you have lemon extract, which is super easy to make, then you can pour a little extract in there because you're going to be baking it. And if you want to know how to make a lemon extract, it's just vodka and lemon peel. That's it. Let it marinate for a long time, a few months, and then you'll open it up and it'll be really lemony and you have lemon extract. Same with orange, same with lime, same with pretty much anything. Cinnamon extract is the best. Okay, I'm going to consider that to be good. Don't forget to get the stuff on the inside. Put that back over there. Anybody ever made extracts before? You guys ever done this lemon? You know how to get the juices flowing by mashing it a little bit and rolling it around, and then give it a cut in half. Knife seems to be a little dull. All right. And then I just usually, sometimes, you're welcome to use your hand and just cut your lemon that way. No big deal if you don't have a zester. So just squeeze that lemon a little bit more. That's all right. And then I just do like that. Or you can use your zester. Right. They also have the handheld zesters. You can use those. All right. Anybody ever made extracts? I didn't see anybody. No? They're so easy. They're so fun. I really like the cinnamon one though. Vanilla, that's easy to make too. Vanilla beans, vodka. Open your lemon beans up, scrape them out, throw the bean and the inside, the whole bean plus the stuff that you scrape out, throw it into a jar of vodka and let it sit. And you have homemade vanilla extract. Okay. So that's that. So I did cinnamon earlier whenever I made my other ones. I love nutmeg. So I'm going to add just a pinch of nutmeg because a little bit goes a long way. The same with ginger. A little bit goes a long way. You could add salt in there too if you wanted to, kind of bring out that flavor a little bit. I don't, but feel free to experiment and do that. Okay. Yeah. Did I get everything? Sometimes I talk too much. I just lose track of what I'm doing. Okay, now you're just going to give it a little stir. Yep. And you're just going to mix it all together. And you're going to see this is going to start weeping really quickly. All right. So the lemon does a couple of things, right? It enhances our flavor of what we're doing here, but it also, especially whenever you're using a fruit that will brown really quickly, it will help prevent the browning of that. Oxidization. Big word. Okay, so you're going to mix that all together. That all over there. And that's okay. You know, it looks kind of like I didn't mix it all up. It's going to start weeping pretty quickly. And then you're just going to keep mixing it up, especially right before you put it into your pie crust. Okay, so now the magic of TV is that I already made some. And you can see how much, I mean, I made this like 2 hours ago maybe, and you can see how it's like really nice. It's weepy, but it's not real runny, okay? This is kind of the consistency that you want, all right? And if you feel like you need to add a little bit more flour or even more berries, feel free to do that, okay? I'm just giving it a good mix up, all right? Now, let's clean up our workstation a little bit. Because the other thing you're gonna want, we're going to, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna roll out our dough, I'm gonna cut it, and all I use, I have these little Pyrex set, and they all have different colors on them. And I don't know what colors they come in now, but it's like small is green, mine this size is orange. And I think this is like about a 4-inch diameter. You want roughly 4 inches. Listen, if you want to go bigger, smaller, do whatever. This is just how I do it. This just works really well for me. It doesn't take a lot of filling once you roll it out. So if you make it bigger, you're going to use a little bit more filling. If you make them smaller, you're going to use a little less filling. Okay. So I'm going to roll my dough out and cut some circles, put it on my baking sheet. We're going to fill them. We're going to fold them over. We're going to do a little bit of decorating, and then we're going to do an egg wash, and then we're going to do a little sugar on top, just so you kind of know where I'm going. Okay. I'm going to clean my station just a bit because I need some room. And then we're going to get to going. We're going to finish this up. You need a fork. You need a tablespoon. Usually I use like a tablespoon, you know, this is a teaspoon obviously, but I use a tablespoon. But all I have is a teaspoon. And I have this tablespoon, so whatever. But usually it's a tablespoon of filling. Just so that's why I'm talking about tablespoons. This here, we're going to get our workstation ready. Yeah. Baking sheet, preheat your oven to 400. And we're going to bake these for about 20 to 25 minutes. What I like to do, and I'm going to talk to you about, let me take a breath there because I want to forget again. So you're making the stuff, you have the time to make it, but you don't need this stuff tonight. You need this for your Saturday dinner that you're having, your potluck dinner, and you want to make hand pies for it. But you have time today, right? So you're going to make your dough. You're going to put it in the refrigerator. You're going to make your filling. You're going to put it in the refrigerator. It's going to be good for a couple of days. What happens if you decide on Saturday, oh shoot, I don't really want to make those hand pies. I really want to make something else. That's okay. Because all you're going to do is you're going to put your dough and your filling into the freezer separately. You're going to wrap them all up, seal them however you do. You're going to put them in the freezer and they're going to be fine. Then you're going to, the next time you decide you want to make hand pies, you've got everything done. You bring them to room temperature, roll it out, make your hand pies. What happens if you make your hand pies and you don't put them in the oven? You run out of time. And now you have these hand pies that are put together but not baked. That's all right. You're going to put them in the freezer. You're going to take them. I would recommend, if you can, put them on a baking sheet. Just lay them out. They're already made up. Don't do the egg wash. Don't do the sugar. You're going to get them right to where they need to be. You're going to put them on your pan, put them in the freezer, freeze them, pop them out, put them in a bag, however you freeze them. Then you can put them right on your baking sheet, put them right in the oven. All right. So all of this can be frozen in any way that you want. I just wouldn't bake them first. That's all. Okay. Questions about that? I meant to tell you that earlier, and I promised I would tell you that, and I didn't do it. Okay. So this is the dough that is very wet. I know it's very wet because I used its mate earlier to make my batch. And it took a lot of flour to get them not wet. Do you see how this is sticking? This should not be sticking to that plastic. If this was done and it was like the way it should have been, it would just roll right off of there. Okay, but that's okay. Like I said, we're gonna fix it. All right, hold on. I want you to see my rolling out technique here. Use whatever rolling pin you have. I like these. I think they're called French rolling pins, but whatever you have works. If you don't have a rolling pin, use a bottle, like a glass bottle, wine bottle, or whatever you have. And all we're gonna do, okay, I'm gonna show you this so you can see my butter in here. I promised you that. I will show you the butter. Can you see those chunks of butter? I don't know if you can or not. My lighting in here is not the best. This dough needs a lot of work. See how it's like stretching? It should not be doing that. It's too wet, but I don't know if you can see these chunks of butter. That is going to make a really, really good pie crust. Make it very flaky. Okay, let me work with this dough because it is not where it should be. All I'm going to do is just keep rolling it out a little bit, adding more flour to it. Now it's looking good. Okay, I'm going to show you this here in just a second. All I did was kind of fold it, get some flour on it, and I'm just kind of folding it over and like letting it roll out a little bit because that's going to work that flour into it without kneading it. Okay, here we go. Now it's nice and stretchy. You see how I can hold it up and it's not stretching out like it was doing? That makes a good pie crust. Okay. And you should be able to move it around. That's one of the key things. Flip it over, move it around. And you're going to roll it out. I'm not really good with measuring this. Usually I just go by sight whenever I put it onto my pan, but about a 1/4 inch thick if you like to kind of know those directions. Okay. I'm going to roll it out just a little bit more here. Like I said, you should be able to, making sure I'm not missing any questions or comments. You should be able just to pick it up and move it. That means, did you see how I just picked it up? It didn't stick, but it's not crumbling. It's not growing. The pie crust is ready. Okay. Take your bowl. Can you guys see this? There you go. Not to make you seasick. Okay. You know, you're just going to put it down. I take my sharp knife. If you have a cookie cutter that's like this, glass won't cut all the way through, and that's okay. I just use my knife and I just flip right around. I don't know. Is that a 1/4 inch thick? I think that is. It's perfect. It's nice. It's sturdy. It's going to hold your filling really well. So what I like to do is I like to go ahead and cut out all my rounds and use up all my dough and put them on here. But I think for the sake of showing you how to put this together, I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll finish rolling those out and cutting them, okay? That way we're not crowded on the pan so much. Okay, so you have your rounds ready. I'm going to give this another little stir. I see my chunks of lemon in there. And I am going to use this spoon. So like I said earlier, use a tablespoon, but I don't have a tablespoon on me. So, but this is what I want to show you. Okay, so what I like to do is I like to off-center it. Because what you're going to do is you're going to take this pie crust and you're going to fold it over. So I try to off-center it. Like if you put it in the center, then it's not really going to fold as well, okay? And that's probably pretty good. That's a heaping teaspoon, okay? Then what I like to do is I like to have a little bowl of water because you're gonna have to seal this, right? So it's dry going to dry, it's not gonna seal. So you wanna wet it. You could use a brush for this if you wanted, which I don't think I brought over here with me actually. I did not. And then you just roll it over and you just fold it. That guy's a little small or a little, he's probably got too much stuffing in it. Okay, and then you're just sealing him up. That's all you're doing. Then what I like to do, pie wants to breathe. So you want to make sure that you are cutting holes in the top. They're going to leak out. Like I've never had a hand pie not leak out whenever I'm making it. So, you know, sometimes they don't, but mine do. So what I like to do is you can decorate this however you want to. Like before you did this, you could actually take a tiny little cookie cutter and you could cut like a heart in it, or you could cut like a little star or whatever you want to do. But you get lazy sometimes. And so what I do is I just take a knife, and you want to make sure you're going through the dough. And I just do I usually do 3 slits. You could do 4 slits. You could do whatever you want to. That's the very basic. You just want to make sure that it breathes. It has room for that air to escape out of it. And then, because I'm fancy, I like to take a fork and I like to go around the edge and make it just a little fancy. You don't have to. There's nothing that says, there's no hand pie rule. And then that's your hand pie. You guys see I did a little decorating, and then I have my slits. They're completely open. And then at the end, what we would do is brush on our egg wash and then sprinkle a little sugar on it, and they're good to go. All right, so let's finish those out. You guys got any questions so far? Everything's clear. You guys are going to be making ham pies. Yes? All right. So I'm just going to put this back out here. I'm just going to roll it out a little bit because it got a little squished. Okay. Like I said, you can find this recipe and the instructions over on my website, which I'm happy to leave for you if you'd like. So I like egg and milk, but what I have here tonight, whenever I'm in a pinch and I don't want to go, whatever, I do egg and thank you, Jonathan. I do egg and water, which is what I have tonight, which is what you're going to see. You could do just egg, but it's, just thin it out. The water or the milk just thins it out a little bit. The milk actually helps it to brown up a little bit more too. But egg and water is just fine. And it's like 1 egg, beat it up, and then maybe a teaspoon of water in there, or milk, whichever you prefer. And then I just, whatever kind of sugar you have can go right on top. And that just makes it, I don't know, just gives it a little golden brown and a little extra something on top, a little extra love on top. Okay. Those are getting a little thin, but that's okay. They will work just as well. Okay. Are you guys bakers? A lot of you baked before? Yeah. Jonathan and I talked about that earlier. Yeah, I like baking too. It's my favorite. It's my favorite thing to do. Okay. Now, once you get it, I didn't have enough left here, so I'm just going to take and water on the side. I might throw down just a little bit more flour because I just got water on it. And you're just going to keep rolling it out, just like you normally would, like your cookies or whatever it is that you're making, right? Oh, this dough is so good. I didn't taste it. See, I was going to try not to teach you guys bad habits. I'm trying to teach people how the right way to do things first. Okay. We're good. We're good on time. Okay. I'm just going to roll these out. I'm just going to keep cutting, and then we're going to, I'm probably going to do 2 more, just because. And then, and I don't, feel free to freeform them. I'm not going to cut that off. This is your project. You make them however you want. You don't have a goal, just guesstimate. No big deal. I did do one earlier as my sample because it was so wet, and I just said, oh, well, whatever. And then I ended up having to roll it back out to get it to stick, and it ended up being like a big blob. So it's all good. Okay. All this stuff out of the way. We're going to fill these. Okay. I always like to just give it a good stir before I use it, just to get it all mixed in. And you might have some filling left, but you, if you use this double crust dough recipe, you're going to have a ton of dough left over. Okay. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just adding a teaspoon, and I'm going to go back and fill it in. It does not take a lot of filling. And you're going to think that these don't have a lot of filling in them until you bake them. And that's whenever you see if you've overfilled it. because it does not take a lot. And it actually spreads out in that dough and really has a lot of filling in it. You're going to see that here in just a second. As soon as I'm done with this, I'm going to show you. Okay. All right. Watch here. Doing good. Everybody's doing good. We're all hanging in there. We're almost done. If you were making along with me, then you would be almost done. And feel free to use whatever pie, oops, finger in the wrong place. You know, feel free, if you haven't made pie crust before and you don't want to do this, buy it at the store. Not a big deal. You're going to save yourself some steps and you're just going to make your filling, and then you're going to let your filling rest. It's going to weep for about 30 minutes. So you can make your filling and then you can go do other stuff and then you can come back and then you're just going to roll out that pie crust and you're going to make it. It'll be good. All right. Almost done. I don't know if you guys, yeah. Okie dokie. Good thing I have all that coffee. It's bringing all that energy. That and hand pies. Eating these things. Okay. There we go. We are good to go. You guys can still see me here. I'm just going to go through, and it doesn't matter which you do your slits, do your decorating, whatever it is you want to do. It just works. It's just easier to like roll everything out, you know, and then fill and then turn and then, you know, just do it that way. So, but feel free, you'll get your own rhythm. And that's really all there is to it. All right, I'm not going to crimp these. I'll crimp a couple. Why not? We got the time. I think you guys get the point though, right? You don't need to see me use a fork. You get the point. And I usually put foil down on my baking sheet because I don't like to scrub my baking sheets afterwards. You don't have to do that, but you don't have to spray anything either. These things will just come right. It's like a pie. Like whenever I do a pie and I use a pie plate, I don't spray it or anything. You don't need to. It'll come right off. And what you'll notice whenever you're baking these, you're going to be like, oh my goodness, they're like really like sizzling and stuff. It's that really yummy butter that we used in there. Okay. Okay. And if like this one, I don't know, let me show you. But some of the filling came out. I put in too much filling. But whenever you bake it, it's going to come out anyway, a little bit. And that's why I usually put aluminum foil down. Okay. So now we have our hand pies are ready for our egg wash. Like I said, I did not bring my brush over. I buy those, I teach a lot of classes where we use the brushes, but I usually keep a couple back for in my pantry, but it's just like craft paint brushes. That's all. For whatever you have, you can use silicone, whatever you have. So this is my egg, and like I said, I beat it up, and I have about a teaspoon of water mixed in there, and I'm just going to give it another little stir because it's just been sitting there in the refrigerator since I did the other ones. Now it's going to be interesting. I'm just going to use my fingers. You just want to get it on there. All right. If you have your brush, which you don't have to have, obviously, you can just do this. You're just spreading it out. It's going to help make it golden brown, and it's going to help hold that sugar on there. All right. Okay. Oh, there we go. That worked. Oh, everywhere. Okay. Messy. That's why the brush is better, but whatever. Oops. Pretend like you didn't see that. Okay, now I'm going to take a tablespoon. You're not going to use the whole thing. It's just easier to do it this way. I'm just going to sprinkle a little on there. You don't need much. It's just enough to give it a little golden brown. Ooh. Pretend like you didn't see that. Oops. Wow. There we go. This one's going to be mine for later. I'm going to sugar on there. I like the sugar. Okay. That's it. You're going to put it in your oven, 400 degrees, preheated. You're going to bake them for about 20 to 25 minutes. How do you know they're done? All of this juice, and this is true with any pie, this is how you know a pie is done. Your top's going to get golden brown, and those juices, you're going to see those juices start bubbling up, and that's when you know it's done. If you get that bubbling before your top is brown, you can either keep baking it, or what I do is I pull it out and I put it under the broiler, and then I just brown the tops. But once that stuff, you'll see it's all cooked, it's nice and brown, and then all those juices, you'll hear it, you'll see it. And especially if you have a big pie, you're making a regular size pie, those juices are going to start bubbling up. A whole pie will take you about 45 minutes. These things are going to take you about 20, 25. Pull them out, put them under the broiler if they're not quite where they need to be. And then, my friends, you have hand pies. That's it. And you can see the juices have come up, they've bubbled out. That's all right. These things, I'm going to put one up for you. These things are full of jammy, yummy blueberry, and they're like, the blueberries are cooked, they're all broken down. It's just the right amount of filling. They're really, really good. Trust me. These are like so easy and so good. And you're going to wow your friends and family, and they're going to think that you have slaved away all day, and they're not going to know that it literally took you 30 minutes to make these things. Especially if you go through and you can make them and put them in the freezer or have them in the refrigerator, and then you throw them together, it's going to be like even less time. But they're so good. And I'm telling you, people will beg you for these. And you'll be like, I don't know if I can slave away over that hot stove all day making those things, but just for you, I'll do it. And they won't know the difference. And that's it, my friends. You have made hand pies. That's it.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and unmute, allow people to unmute if they have any questions.
Sure.
I went ahead and did that. So if anybody has questions, go ahead and unmute yourself and feel free.
We need the website.
I think Jonathan put it on there for you.
It should be in the chat. It should be chickenlibrarian.com.
Let me stick it in there just again for anybody. And if you go on my website and you put in the search bar hand pies, it'll pop up. And every time I talk about hand pies, it'll pop up, but I think it literally says blueberry hand pies or something. So if you want to make this with apples, so with an apple pie, you tend to like slice them into, bigger chunks or whatever. With a hand pie, because you don't have a ton of room to work with, you could make your dough a little bit bigger. But what I would do is I would just chunk them smaller, or you could even just kind of mash them with a potato masher just to get them a little less chunky. Now, I tend to not, no, you do peel your apples. I tend to not peel stuff. But with an apple pie, you would definitely peel it. So it's going to look with a potato, like what I would do is you've got your apples in here, you've sliced them up, you've got all your yummy goodness in there. And then I would just take a potato masher and just mash it up a little bit. So it's more like an apple sauce type thing. Otherwise, if you just do like a regular apple slice, it's probably going to be too big. That's all. You're just going to chunk it up a little smaller, or just even give it a little mash. That's all. No big deal. Extra step there. All right. Anybody else?
Anyone else? All right. Well, if no one else has any questions, I want to go ahead and thank Kristen again for coming to the library and showing us how to make hand pies. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And certainly if y'all have any questions, you can go to chickenlibrarian.com.
Happy to answer questions at any point. If you get stuck or whatever, I'm not leaving you on your own. I'll be there with you.
All right. Well, I hope everyone has a good night. Stay safe and be well.
All right. Thank you.